It appears that the mainstream media has been going crazy lately, and they have just confirmed a number of things that you should pay particular attention to. The news that I want to start with is arguably the funniest of all. Do any of you know what the reverse Kramer index is? That's what Jim Cramer said anyway. According to him, the mainstream narrative is reaching a certain turning point that is clearly incorrect. Much like Jim Cramer in this instance, they are attempting to essentially brainwash us into believing a particular narrative is true when it isn't. Therefore, now is the time for us to pay attention. I think this is a good purchase, but we'll talk about that more later. I am always buying when this guy is bearish because he is unquestionably the biggest liar in all of New York City. All right, but there are also a number of significant events between Trump and Putin that will, whether we like it or not, have a significant impact on the markets. According to Bloomberg, President Trump is scheduled to meet with Putin on a possible peace agreement for Ukraine, and an announcement may be made on Tuesday. I would now want to remind everyone that today is Monday. Therefore, the markets will go completely crazy if they announce a peace deal on Tuesday, right? As has been repeatedly stated, post-war rallies are typically completely ridiculous. Additionally, it appears like every market is preparing for a huge rally. The stock market recently recorded a one-day increase in value of around $1 trillion. The entire cryptocurrency market recovered quite well, and several of the stocks are still rising by a respectable amount. Indeed, the markets are basically getting ready for a potentially highly positive event. There won't be any significant announcements on Tuesday. It does appear that the markets are currently pricing in a small amount of good news, therefore do anticipate a fair correction. I believe that if the conclusion of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is announced, it will undoubtedly be something very amazing. Yes, but as you can see, Trump claims that we're getting along well with Russia. By Tuesday, we'll check to see if we have anything to share. There's a very good likelihood of a deal, he says. Thus, he is putting himself in a position to say, all right, I think this is going to be pretty much the end of it. And I'll say that Trump has performed admirably in a number of areas. It's a terrific thing that he managed to persuade the Russian troops to spare the lives of several Ukrainians when they were besieged. People's lives being saved, of course, is incredible, and we truly like seeing such things occur. We can also see that the global and U.S. economies are currently rather pessimistic. I think it's fascinating. Although we have some excellent news, market sentiment is currently at almost all-time lows. Things you don't see very often, do you understand? Additionally, there are some intriguing developments regarding inflation at the moment that will significantly impact the market, particularly cryptocurrencies, which we will discuss shortly, but I must first address this. The Conference Board Leading Economic Index, or LEI, saw a 3% year-over-year fall in 2024, marking the third consecutive year of decline. As you can see from this figure, this corresponds to the three-year run that took place throughout the 2008 financial crisis. There was a huge drop. In 32 of the previous 34 months, the index has declined over a period of 1 month. The ISM New Orders Index and consumer expectations for business conditions have been the index's largest drags over the past 6 months. The LEI is currently down 15.5% from its peak, which is almost the same amount as it was during the recessions of the 1970s and 1980s. Is the American economy slowing down? It's a really good question. Does it slow down? We are seeing some signs that it is, but when you look at the inflation numbers in the stock market, you realize that this is the most peculiar period in history. It's completely ridiculous. Since the 1980s, the way we currently see recessions appears to have undergone significant shift. Therefore, I believe that although the United States may be experiencing a recession, we may be approaching it from a little different perspective as a result of Biden's actions on all of these government positions. Still, what's happening here is really very weird. In addition, the USDA reports that wholesale egg prices have decreased for the third consecutive week to $4.15 a dozen. When we look at this data, according to some, they cost about $3.85 per dozen. That represents a $2.70 decrease in a single week. Why is this happening? Ironically, Cal-Maine Foods, a single egg manufacturer, has a monopoly on the Western markets in the United States. Additionally, they are now compelled to reduce their costs as a result of new rules. Thus, the Trump administration is taking this as a clear sign that things are becoming worse. However, the problem was that these producers and manufacturers were doing this in numerous American states. Because of their monopolistic activities, they were permitted to raise their prices by absurd levels. To put it another way, they virtually created the market themselves because they had no competitors, because they had absorbed most of the other businesses in the area. In order to compensate for the money they had just spent purchasing all of these other farms, they decided to raise their rates in order to boost their earnings. Thus, this is what we are currently witnessing. In essence, the Trump administration says, no, you can't do this. We will pursue you unless you reduce your prices. And all of this takes place in the background. Although it isn't being widely reported, it is causing prices to drop, and it's likely that they will loosen the knot on these folks a bit. Nevertheless, this is one of the primary strategies we use in America to combat inflation. It is targeting the monopolies that control the markets and generate astronomical profits, threatening to take action against them if they don't make any changes. And if we want a competitive market, I absolutely believe this is the best course of action. We want a number of companies to compete with each other and avoid monopolies in the market because, as we have seen with regard to the cost of a wide range of goods and services, monopolies naturally lead to a lot of issues. The biggest guy will, of course, always put their shareholders' interests and making sure they're making as much money as possible first, so don't let them win all the time. Since their goals are obviously not entirely aligned, they will not care nearly as much about the typical customer who purchases their goods. Having said that, there have been numerous criticisms of the federal government and its actions, such as printing a ridiculous quantity of money. Elon Musk most recently discussed the magical money computers because, well, this is basically what the federal government has been doing for a very long time. Printing money out of thin air. This is, of course, another excellent argument for cryptocurrencies, which we'll discuss in a moment. But first, I want to play this video. It's quite humorous. Pay attention. I refer to my computer, or any machine that has the ability to generate income out of thin air, as magic. It's magic money. How does that operate then? It only makes payments, and you mentioned that Treasury has 11 of these computers that send out trillions of dollars in payments. Most of them are at Treasury, there are some at DoD, some at 1 or 2 at State, and some with the amount at HHS. I believe we have now located 14 magic money computers. 14. All right. They send money for no apparent reason. I refer to it as right. Therefore, targeting monopolies that are inflating their prices because they lack competition is the real method to combat inflation.